What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and in this video we're going to be telling a prison story. This is day 4 of our 20-day prison story marathon, and in this video I'm going to be telling you about the worst prison guard that I ever had to deal with while I was in prison. Now, when you think about being locked up in prison and you think about the people that you're going to have to deal with in there, it probably doesn't take much to imagine that most of the people you're going to deal with in there aren't exactly going to be the greatest of people. I mean, nobody ever really goes to prison for being a good person. But it's not just the prisoners who can be some of the worst people you've ever met in your life. It can also very easily, and in a lot of cases will be, the people who work inside of that prison as well. Whether that's the guards inside of that prison or any other type of staff, like the kitchen staff or even medical. And you know, as I sit here and think about it, I've met some pretty bad people in both of those regards as well. Kitchen staff, and also some of the nurses and doctors inside of a prison. And don't get me wrong, there are some good people that you will meet while locked up. Whether we're talking about the actual prisoners, the actual prison guards, or other staff. But the reality of the situation is that most people you're gonna meet while serving anytime, anywhere, in any facility, I'm almost about to give myself a brain aneurysm. At any facility, they're not exactly gonna be the cream of the crop. So with all of that being mentioned, I mean, it really took me some mental digging. What's the right way I'm trying to say this? Some thinking about all of the many different prison guards that I met throughout all of the time that I served to actually pinpoint who I consider to be the absolute worst prison guard that I ever dealt with while in prison. It was then that I remembered this one particular prison guard. And this guy worked at the very last prison that I served time at, in the prison that I was actually released from. And because of the fact that there's a lot of local support for After Prison Show, and especially from that prison in particular, I really don't want to use his real name. Though I probably should, because this guy was such an utter piece of shit. Even with that, I'm going to give this guy a nickname for the sake of this prison story time video. So I figure we'll just go ahead and refer to this guy as Fat Bastard. And I know that nickname sounds a little harsh, but I have to assure you, this guy definitely deserves this nickname, if not 1,000 times worse than Fat Bastard. But I first met Fat Bastard shortly after I had been transferred to Indian Creek Correctional Center. Again, this would be the last prison that I would end up serving the final remainder 2.5 years of my prison sentence at. And the crazy thing about this is that when I first became familiar with who this prison guard was, I didn't really think he was that bad of a guard. I actually thought he might be okay. But because of the fact that this guy commonly and frequently worked in the housing unit that I would spend the majority of my stay at this prison in, it didn't take long before I realized that my first assumption of this guy was completely wrong. Now, real quick, let me give you a little more insight into what it's like to actually deal with prison guards. The way the scheduling for how these guards actually went was that these guards would work 5 days on one week, a shift that would last from 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening, 12 hours a day for 5 days that week. And then the following week, these guards would only work 2 days, 2 12-hour shift days for that entire week. So 1 week you would have to deal with these guards for almost the entire week as they're working 5 days that week. And then the following week, you would only have to deal with them for 2 days as they worked those 2 12-hour shifts that week. And this actually was a really good thing, especially if these guards were complete assholes like this guy Fat Bastard was, that this prison storytime video is about. So when you think about this crazy schedule that these guards work, 1 week working 5 days, another week working only 2 days, it's probably easy to imagine that anytime a guard was working a 5-day work week, especially a guard who most prisoners would consider a complete asshole, those were some really tough weeks to actually get through while serving time. And the only good thing that would come from serving those tough weeks is that you would know, well, at least the following week, this guy is only going to be working 2 days during that week. But the crazy thing about that is that even though on that following week you would get that long break from that guard that everybody hated, when he did come into work for those 2 days, he would try to pack in a week's worth of bullshit in that 24-hour span that you would have to deal with that guy for. 2 12-hour shifts. But what exactly made this prison guard fat bastard the prison guard that I consider the absolute worst prison guard that I ever dealt with while locked up? It's pretty much a long list of things, with one particular incident really sticking out in my mind that absolutely could have ended with like the worst case scenario. And I'm going to tell you all about that, but I'm first going to begin with all of the little things that added up combined that made this prison guard the worst one ever that I had to deal with. Let's start with the fact that this guy, like a lot of other prison guards, would always bring his fucking problems to the prison from home. It was really easy to look at this guy and tell that this guy's home life was probably just absolutely miserable. And that's not an uncommon thing that you'll pick up and perceive from dealing with different types of guards no matter where you're serving time at. A lot of guards that you'll meet along the way look like they have the worst possible life that you could probably ever live. And that's crazy to think, considering you're on the other side of the fence as somebody who's a prisoner serving time. But Fat Bastard in particular was one of these type of guards that you could just tell his life had to be some absolute shit, and every day he would bring that along on the job with him and basically take out all of his frustrations that the world had put upon him on us, the guys who were serving time, just trying to get through whatever damn time that we had to serve. I mean, you would think about it, his life really couldn't have been that damn bad, considering he's wearing a completely different uniform than the kind that I was wearing and like so many others were wearing as well. But even with that, go ahead and throw in the fact that on any given day you had no idea what this guy was gonna be like, because there were some cases where this guy would actually try to be a cool guard. And he would walk around laughing and joking with some of the guys like he was a prisoner right along with us. I know you guys are gambling right over here and making wine and tattooing right over here. I know what goes on in here. And to be honest with you, I don't even care. Just don't let me see it. Now you see, for some prisoners, this was a real tricky thing to deal with. How on one day this guy was cool and how on the next day he could be a complete ass. And when I say that this was tricky for some prisoners, I mean, I honestly don't even know why it was. But you would have some prisoners who actually thought that this guy was cool. And they would chop it up with this guy, talking to him. Oh yeah, fat bastard, you're so cool. You're such a cool guard. You're absolutely right about everything you're saying. It's prison. You know, guys are just gonna do what they gotta do to do time. And with the fact that there were certain prisoners who perceived this fat bastard guard to be cool, these certain prisoners were doing what's referred to as dry snitching, basically telling on things that are going on inside of the housing unit without even realizing, and I don't even know how this even makes sense, but without even realizing that they were telling on things. And you know, maybe it was that this prison guard was that damn smart, but more realistically, these prisoners who would kick it with him were in all likelihood just that damn dumb, because they would essentially be giving this guard the ammunition and evidence he needed to absolutely flip the script and then turn into that real live asshole guard that he was. Because how on that one day he was so cool, well, the next day that guard would come to work ready to tear the entire housing unit apart. I mean, this guy would literally carry out entire full-blown shakedowns by himself. And how on just the day before, how he didn't care about anything that was going on and how prisoners were just gonna do their time however they did it, the next day he's right in there, tearing the entire housing unit apart, finding everything that he assumed was going on inside of that housing unit and everything that these other prisoners who thought he was so cool and yet had basically dry snitched on everything. He was in there finding all of the gambling paraphernalia, because you're not really allowed to gamble in prison. So poker chips, hell, we weren't even allowed to have playing cards at this prison. We actually had to make our own playing cards just so we could play poker. But he would be finding gambling paraphernalia, wine, tattooing stuff, and he would not let anything slide. This guy was writing charges and sending prisoners to the hole, which would cause them to lose good time and essentially cause these prisoners to spend more time locked up. And you know, here's something really crazy to throw into all of this. You know, you can have a complete asshole guard, a guard that will not let anything go, will not let anything slide. And the crazy thing about it is, prisoners will actually respect that prison guard, because of the fact that that guy does not change up at all. He is the same every single day, and prisoners know what to expect when that guy's working. But a prison guard that prisoners will not respect is a guy that flip-flops from day to day, just like this guy Fat Bastard did all the time. And you know, not only would this guy act cool one day and then send people to the hole the very next day, I mean, that's just one thing. Then throw in the fact that this guy would not even do his damn job. He would definitely do the searching, writing charges, and sending people to the whole part of his job. But when it came to other things that he was responsible for doing, such as letting prisoners out to wreck when it was wreck time, if this guy, for whatever reasons, was butthurt or in his feelings or mad about whatever, he would then take it out on the entire housing unit. And you gotta imagine that in these housing units, there was 100 prisoners per housing unit. So all it would take is like one prisoner to get this guy in his feelings or mad about whatever. And then, yeah, we wouldn't even get any wreck. It could be the nicest damn day out. Wreck being something that prisoners absolutely look forward to on a daily basis or however often they get it. And it wouldn't take but for the slightest thing to happen. Hell, it could be something that this guy brought from home. Maybe his wife's cheating on him every time he goes to work. I mean, I don't know. Shit, he probably doesn't even have a wife now that I think about it. But this guy would definitely go out of his way to make the time that we were serving in this prison way harder and way more miserable than it ever had to be. And a really good way that he went about doing that would be denying us rec, one of the very few little privileges that we got while in prison. He would take that away from us just because he felt like he wanted to. Now, you know, there's really like a million other little trivial tidbit bullshits that this guy did that added up to make this guy the piece of shit that he truly was. But I want to move on to the one incident that sticks out in my mind above anything else that this guy did. And to put it better, it was something that he said that almost caused World War III at this prison. And to be honest with you, I can't even really remember why he said what he did. I'm pretty sure it was because he was pissed off at somebody. Some prisoner had definitely said something to him that just got him all worked up. And he said something again that this could have had like the most detrimental outcome and came very close to starting a complete race war inside of this prison. Now, real quick, this housing unit that I was in and this housing unit that this officer, Fat Bastard, worked in, it was made up of a lot of different prisoners and a few different gangs. You had Bloods in this housing unit, you had Crips in this housing unit, and you also had AB's Aryan Nation dudes in this housing unit as well. And out of like 100 prisoners who were housed in this housing unit, there might have been like 10 or 15 Blood dudes in here, maybe like 5 or 10 Crip dudes in here, and probably something like 10 AB dudes in this housing unit. And just to throw this in here as well, this officer, Fat Bastard, he was this fat black prison guard who I'm pretty sure we quickly realized he was also a racist as well. And this one day, Fat Bastard came into this housing unit, obviously pissed off at some white dude for whatever reason. I don't even know what the hell happened. But Fat Bastard came into this housing unit and he made this announcement that was like one of the craziest things I had ever heard in my life. But he said something along the lines of, all you white boys in here are scared to death. Y'all ain't gonna bust a grape. Y'all ain't gonna do nothing. Y'all some pussies. And again, I have no idea why this guy came into this housing unit and said this. But when he did, all of a sudden, shit absolutely hit the fan. All of a sudden, you've got all of these AB dudes jumping up, basically talking shit right back to him. Man, fuck you, you fat motherfucker. And I mean, it was a hell of a lot worse than just that. And then next, and for whatever reason, all of a sudden, these Blood and Crip dudes jumped up at the same time, getting in these AB dudes' faces for whatever damn reason. And me just sitting here like seeing all of this taking place, me being with no gang whatsoever, and basically just being a bystander to this entire situation unfolding. I gotta tell you, like, what I remember most from this situation was just how thick the racial tension inside of this housing unit became in that damn moment. All because of what this prison guard came into the housing unit and said. And you know, when he said what he said, I mean, he basically just walked right back out the door. Right as soon as these AB dudes jumped up and got in his face and were cussing him up and down, this guy just turned around and was laughing and walked right back out of the housing unit. Went right back into his little guard station and just probably waited for the show to take place. Hell, you know, there's probably even a good chance that he did this just so he could see something pop off inside of the housing unit. With this guard back in the safety of his little guard station, probably just sitting back laughing at everything that was taking place, these AB dudes, these Bloods and these Crips on the other side were basically right there in each other's face, ready to damn near kill each other right there in that housing unit. But for whatever reason, they didn't do it right then. With as thick as the tension was in the air and with all of these dudes in each other's faces, ready to just damn near probably kill each other right there in that moment, for whatever reason, they decided they weren't going to do it right there in the housing unit, and they were going to wait until the rec yard opened and they could all go out there and take these problems out onto the rec yard, where they would be out there with the other housing units as well, and they could be out there with more numbers to represent their individual gangs. More AB dudes, more Bloods, and more Crips. And in some cases, when a race war is brewing, you're gonna have those AB white dudes ready to go to war with those Bloods and those Crips at the same time. And you know, not only did they wait for the rec yards to open to take this race war outside so they could have more numbers representing their individual gangs, it was also on the rec yard where these guys would have their weapons buried out there. So taking this problem outside really had a lot of advantages to all of the gangs that were involved in this potential race war that was brewing. Now, I gotta tell you again, I was affiliated with no gang whatsoever. But even with that being said, I mean, I was absolutely scared to death. I was scared to death that I was somehow gonna get implicated into this, a situation that I definitely didn't want no parts of, considering how this entire situation was brought on by this piece of shit guard who came in here and said this dumb shit in the first place. This was an absolutely stressful time to be locked up. I mean, it was like basically everybody was walking around on tiptoes, just waiting for the other shoe to drop and a full-blown race war to pop off at any moment. And I'll never forget when that rec yard finally did open and how when we were let outside, you had all of these white dudes lined up on one side and all of these Bloods and these Crips lined up on the other. I mean, this almost looked like a legitimate war with two sides ready to go to battle. And you know, thinking about it, I mean, that is exactly what it was. These two sides stood divided for what seemed like forever. And then it was finally the head of the AB dudes and the head of the Bloods and the head of the Crips coming together in the middle. And after having some sort of a meeting between the three, and for whatever reason, these three gangs actually squashed this. And I mean, I will never for the life of me understand why. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that all three of these guys might have been thinking just a little bit that if their individual gang actually lost in this battle, and this battle being over something that was originally started by some bullshit that a prison guard had said, well then the entire prison would see that that gang was weak in comparison to whatever gang had actually won. Now, I'm not exactly sure that was the reason why they decided to squash this. I'm just giving you my own little thought on the situation. But again, for whatever reason, they did decide to squash this beef that originated from something that was said by a prison guard I consider the worst guard ever that I had to deal with while serving time. And you know, I can have no respect whatsoever for a person like that who comes to work basically just looking to start problems or basically just trying to make life harder for anybody who's in a less fortunate situation. And that's exactly what it seemed that this guy did, and he did this on a daily basis. And it's because of everything that I've mentioned to you all in this video that I consider this guy the worst piece of shit prison guard I ever dealt with. Hey, look, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about it. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world, never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day. Peace! Let's go ahead and give a few shout outs from yesterday's video, starting with Sark, who says, "Dye your hair, Joe, LOL. Well, you know, to be honest with you, I'm actually planning on dyeing it today. The gray, it will be gone. Shout out to you and thank you for your comment. Alexandro Sanchez, who says, OMG, the vocals. Cry me a river. Cry me a river. Cody's sitting over here laughing at me. I'm getting ready to get on Musical.ly or some other kind of singing platform. Hey, Cody, do we have contact information for American Idol? The skooma addicted Brenton, who says, I was wondering, do you script your videos? I love the videos. I was just wondering. Shout out to you, the skooma addicted Brenton. And no, I don't. What I do is I just basically think about all of the shit that I went through while locked up. And that brings to mind some pretty crazy story ideas. And I just relive those stories. So no script, straight from the old memory banks is where these stories come from. Harry Adderley, who says, greetings from Wales, UK, another quality video, Joe. Keep up the good work. Harry, shout out to you and to everybody who watches After Prison Show from the UK. Thank you for your support. Simply Awesome Vlogs, who says, dude, you're fucking awesome at telling stories. Maybe in the future, you can venture into telling another genre of stories. First of all, thank you for your kind words, and I also just tweeted out yesterday, you know, if I told the before prison stories, those are pretty damn crazy too. So who knows, maybe we could tell some of those stories as well after this 20-day prison story marathon concludes. Let's also shout out MG Toe Warrior, Brian Wellbrock, Sean Wright, Cracks, H. Friendle, and Rick Grimes. Shout out to you guys. Thank you for all of the love and support, and to everyone else as well. And until next time, peace!